Hello besties, I sincerely hope you're all feeling well because I'm about to ensure that you don't feel well for very long. If you already saw the title of this video, today I want to share some of my favorite sad books because many of you probably know Sad Girl Summer, but I'm personally more of a fan of Sad Girl Autumn, and that's what we're celebrating here today. I have 6 recommendations for you that will make you cry, so buckle up and let's get started. The first one is big on TikTok. It's Ottessa Moshfegh's My Year of Rest and Relaxation. And I really have to say, it's about everything it's hyped up to be. This is the story of a young woman who is severely depressed, and in her depressive state of mind she thinks, well, what would really help me is if I slept for a whole year. And if you have ever struggled with depression, I think you know that your brain is lying to you. No matter how much you sleep, it usually doesn't help. But this girl, the main protagonist, is going to great lengths to get to sleep. She gets herself a therapist who she lies to, although I have to say the therapist is also just not that great. She prescribes her a lot of medicine and the protagonist starts to take it. When it inevitably doesn't work anymore because you always have to have a higher dose because the body obviously gets used to it, she keeps on lying just so she can keep sleeping. And she is obviously also losing a lot of weight, and this book just deals with the struggles of depression. And the only thing I really have to flag about it is that in the end her plan works. After she slept for a whole year on and off drugs, she feels better and she starts exploring the world again. And while of course that can happen, it isn't very typical for a depression. Usually you have to work against it, and if you just succumb to it and continue sleeping, it won't get better. She's not gonna sleep for a whole year and is going to be severely depressed, and then one day she's just gonna be like, oh yeah, you know what? That totally fucking helped. I'm ready to go. It's a really sad book, and if you've been meaning to check this one out because you've seen it on TikTok, I'm here to tell you that it's actually pretty good. The second book is Cold Enough for Snow, and I have talked about this at length already in my What I Read in May video, and I also touched upon the subject that May wasn't really the best month to read this book. This book, for me personally, screams November. I think this would be the perfect time to read this heartbreaking little book. Again, this is just a very short read, but I think you really have to take your time with it, and you need to sit with it to get through all of the themes that are displayed in here. I'll just recap the plot for you very quickly. A mother and a daughter are going on a holiday in Tokyo, and over the course of the book you slowly begin to notice that maybe the daughter is there alone, and that maybe she is actually grieving the loss of her mother, who she has been quite estranged to over the course of her life. And this is a story of a woman in her 20s or 30s, I don't quite remember which one it is exactly, but she is struggling with the hard relationship she had with her mother, the ups and downs, the fighting, and how to deal with the grief if you lose someone you really loved but you also were quite distant to. I think this is one of my highlights on the list. I really enjoyed it. I think Jessica Au crafted a really good narrative, and the title Cold Enough for Snow is really displayed in this book because the character also seems quite cold and the emotions are very numb and distant, as if this narrator was left out in the cold for too long. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one and I highly recommend it. Eve Babbitt stand Rise. I have to say I love Eve Babbitt. To be honest, Black Swans is the only short story collection I have read of hers to this day, but I've been meaning to buy more. I just never actually got around to it. And I think what intrigues me about Eve Babbitt is that she's the polar opposite of me, but I somehow still think we would be friends. Eve Babbitt just has a beautiful way of writing about heartbreaking things, and in this collection there are stories of death, there are also stories of dancing and stories of life, so this is a bit of a mixture. It's not all sad, but I would say that a majority of it is sad, or maybe at least has melancholic undertones. And to me, Eve Babbitt feels like listening to Lana Del Rey on vinyl. Like, this is Lana Del Rey core to its fullest. I think if you're a Lana Del Rey girly, you're going to love Eve Babbitt. And the way she talks about relationships or just friends sometimes, that is in a way so toxic but also so intriguing. And yeah, she really has a way of living her life that I could never do. It seems like she has so little anxiety. She does like all this crazy stuff. I think it was so interesting. I always find it interesting to read things that don't completely align with me or even my character. I think it's nice to step outside the box sometimes. This one, again, is for all the Lana Del Rey girlies, for the coquettes, if you will. If you're in line with that aesthetic, I think you're really gonna love this one. Another one that has been hugely popular on TikTok and also on YouTube in the last year especially is Cleopatra and Frankenstein. I have to say, the title alone basically sold me, and I also really loved the cover. It really spoke to me, and I have described this one in the past as normal people but better. I don't know if I've talked here about my hatred of normal people, which obviously doesn't extend to Sally Rooney. I still think she's an amazing writer, but normal people just made me so angry. And to me, Cleopatra and Frankenstein is just the better version of normal people, even though I know it's not nice to draw those comparisons, but that's what it's like in my mind. This is not meant to say that Coco Melor is a much better writer than Sally Rooney, or that I want to compare them to each other. Like, please don't take it as that. Just the themes in here were quite similar. This is the story of a very toxic relationship between a younger woman and an older man. And Frank, which is obviously short for Frankenstein, he is quite rich because he works in marketing, and he meets this young woman and they instantly fall in love. Like, the attraction is there, and on a whim they get married, but then it all goes down the drain basically. The woman is severely depressed and the man just notices that they are not working out together. They fight a lot. There are also mentions of self-harm and everything. So if that triggers you, I would be careful with this book. And also if like toxic dynamics trigger you, I would also be careful with this book. I would look up trigger warnings basically for all of these books. The Sad Girl book reading list, they all have some kind of trigger warning or other. I would still highly recommend this one because I'm gonna spoil the ending, so like skip forward a minute or something. I will try to put it on the screen here if you don't want to hear it. But yeah, I was very happy that in the end those two didn't end up together. There are mentions of infidelity that never really go anywhere. Like, Frank is falling in love with another woman while he's with Cleopatra, with Cleo, I should say. But it doesn't go anywhere. They just end up together after they've broken up. It's so nice to see them grow apart at the end. They don't end up together. They are on friendlier terms, but they know that they've done so much to each other that there's no way they would be happy together. And I really enjoyed that. So yeah, again, read this one. Listen, I'm a Sylvia Plath girl as much as the next person, but I mostly enjoyed her poetry. I actually gave The Bell Jar a 3-star rating, but that doesn't mean I didn't like it. I just expected to like it so much more. I have seen the fig analogy everywhere. I think everyone has seen that, where she talks about all those opportunities, all those versions of yourself you have in life seem to her like figs on a fig tree, and she doesn't know which one to reach for. She doesn't know which version of herself she wants to be. And while she's still thinking about it, she sees those figs decaying, and in turn, she doesn't get to be any of those versions of herself. And I think that speaks to a lot of especially women in their 20s, when our self-worth seems to be directly tied to the way we look. When society tells us that after 30 we can be women or be undesirable, I think that crosses everybody's mind, no matter how detached you think you are from it or your feminist beliefs. I think obviously we live in a society, you know what I mean, society is always gonna have an impact on us. So I think it's no wonder that Sylvia Plath resonates with so many young women, and in turn it's no wonder that people don't really take Sylvia Plath very seriously or say, oh, she just made art for depressed young women, as if not every artist was severely depressed. The other artists just made books for depressed young men, and suddenly that's so much better. But yeah, we all know how especially teenage girls get treated in society and how everything is mocked. And for that alone, I just love Sylvia Plath's writing style in general, and she's really great at it, and she has mastered this craft. And I have heard stories about how she was sitting with her thesaurus and she was trying to pick synonyms for everything, and especially in her poetry, that she sat there for days or weeks just for one poem because she wanted to perfect it, and there's some sort of surrealism in it. And I think that's why I still have to recommend The Bell Jar. If you are a woman in your 20s and you feel like a lot of good things are happening to you, but you still can't seem to enjoy them, I think The Bell Jar is going to encompass what you're feeling pretty well, and that's why it's still on my list, even though I personally just expected more from it. The last one is the first book that is not specifically about depressed women. So yeah, for the gender equality I bring to this channel. Before the Coffee Gets Cold, this is my German edition, has mixed reviews. I've noticed. I've seen many people say that it didn't really speak to them and they didn't make them cry because they felt so detached from it. Other people said that the magical elements in it weren't for them. And I mean, I get it. Of course, you can criticize whatever you want. And other people have said that it was very cliched, the characters in there, the man with dementia, all of that. And yeah, I mean, I get where some of the criticism stems from, but I still think Before the Coffee Gets Cold is a very good book, and I found it to be very sad and touching. And I also loved those elements of magical realism in it. But yeah, if you don't enjoy elements of fantasy or magic in a realistic setting, I think you're not going to like this, because this is what the plot relies on. There is a cafe, and if you sit down in a certain stool at a certain time, the waiter is going to bring you a coffee, and you have time until the coffee gets cold, hence the title of the book, to visit a place in the past. But the rules are that it can only be people that you have visited the cafe with before. So you can not visit people that haven't been to the cafe, and you can only visit the moments where you saw them there. I thought this was a really good idea for a plot, and I really enjoyed it, and I found it to be very touching. But I have also heard that the sequel to this, I think it's Stories from the Cafe or something, that a lot more people like those. I think it's even better rated than the first one, so maybe that's gonna do it for you if you didn't enjoy Before the Coffee Gets Cold. And with that, I have told you about all of the 6 books that I'm trying to get you to read. If you're going to read any of those books, feel free to comment below. I would love to exchange ideas we have about those books, and also if you didn't like them, write that down too. I always find it so interesting what people criticize about books I love. So yeah, with that, I'm going to see you next time, and I hope you're gonna have a great week of reading.